This is a hot take, but I'm going on record here. Squadron 42 is getting a release date announcement in May during Invictus Week. It's coming out this summer before GTA 6 eats the gaming world alive, and there's a solid reason CIG pulled all the old buybacks with Squadron 42. I'm putting all three of those on record right now because I'm confident in what the last few weeks of leaks are telling us, and I feel I can justify each of these. Stick around, this is going to get spicy because I have never tempered my opinion to chase clout. Let's start with the concrete leaks. Evocati testing for 4.8 has zero Invictus Launch Week branding in it. None. Invictus is the second biggest event on the Star Citizen calendar, it's been running for nearly a decade, and the version of the game that's 3 weeks from the PTU has no trace of it whatsoever. Drake Defensecon is scheduled to run 2 weeks from May 14th through the 27th. It's usually 2 days, and that's based on the in-game advertisements currently showing in the Evocati build. Velvet Convention Center and ArcCorp is covered in Drake-exclusive advertising. There is not one visible mention of Invictus or Fleet Week anywhere in the build or what's been data mined from the patch. In fact, Defense Week branding was noticeable to me during the transit rewrite testing as well, and I didn't put it together until now because I was so focused on the damn elevators. At the same time, COG has not so subtly pulled Squadron 42 from old buyback packages. The pledges that used to include Squadron 42 are no longer able to be bought back. And additionally, Chris Roberts has said in interviews more than once now that when Squadron 42 is ready, there won't be a protracted marketing campaign for it. That's the exact phrase he used. No long, protracted marketing campaign. Put those three things together and ask yourself what CIG is playing here, because this looks like a company getting ready to announce something big. So here are my three predictions. 1, CIG is going to use the Invictus window to announce a Squadron 42 release date. I think we get a real event, probably pre-recorded, probably with some of the cast, probably with a new trailer that shows off the amount of polish and engine work that's happened since 2024's last glimpse of the game. 2, that release date is going to land somewhere in 2026. My best guess is late July or August. 3, Squadron 42 pre-orders are coming back with a real price tag attached this time. An honest-to-goodness pre-order. But before you stampede into the comments to dunk on me, there's more to break down here. Let's talk about the buyback removal, because this is one of the things I'm going to catch heat for. The community reaction has been bitching and moaning about CIG, quote-unquote, taking things away from us. And I'm sorry, but no, that's not what happened. Adults understand what's happening here. I'm going to defend CIG on this one because it's the right call for the health of the game, and for all of us who want to be playing it 10 years from now. I'm not an investor in the game. It gets a return on the profits, but I'm absolutely invested in the long-term health of CIG because I want Star Citizen to last as long as World of Warcraft. Here's what the buyback system actually is for anyone who doesn't know. CIG lets you melt ships and packages to buy into store credit and then buy them back later, even if the concept or package is no longer for sale. That's a system almost no other game publisher on the planet offers. You buy a game on Steam and later regret it, you can get a refund. But if you buy it again later, you're paying whatever the current price is. There's no long-term discount or advantage. But in Star Citizen, you can move your money around with your fleet almost indefinitely. It's a legitimate financial flexibility system that benefits the player, and I've used it myself many, many times. But here's what's happening with Squadron 42. Old pledge packages from 5, 7, 10 years ago still included Squadron 42 at whatever the original pledge price was. $50, $40, $30 in some cases. And those packages were circulating on third-party gray market sites because the buyback system makes them semi-liquid. When Squadron 42 actually launches and it's sitting on a storefront at $60 or $70 like every other AAA title, CIG would have been competing directly against their own heavily discounted inventory from a decade ago. That's revenue they can't afford to leave on the table. It's just not reasonable to expect them to do so either. Everyone had years to buy back as many times as they wanted, and they've been saying 2026 since 2023. We were warned. Yes, CIG has over $1 billion, so they can and should afford to eat the revenue loss. That's the argument, and it's lazy thinking dressed up as righteous anger. $1 billion raised over 13 years is not $1 billion sitting in a bank account. Scrooge McDuck really messed up how some people my age think about big numbers like that. CIG has over 1,000 developers on payroll across multiple studios. In Manchester, Austin, Frankfurt, Montreal, developers are expensive. Senior developers working on a project this complex are very expensive. Add motion capture, voice acting, licensed engine costs, server infrastructure, office space, benefits, and everything else that goes into running a studio of that size, And that $1 billion got spent fast. While every other game studio on the planet has been hemorrhaging jobs over the last 2 years, CIG hasn't had a major layoff at scale. I won't recap it, but the last 2 to 3 years haven't been great for game developers. Studios sitting on printers of money like Epic Games and Fortnite's insane revenue cut their workforces drastically. So when somebody types CIG has $1 billion as if that's a mic drop, what they're actually saying is that they don't understand how a game studio operates. $1 billion over 13 years is roughly $77 million a year in revenue. Split that across 1,000 developers and you're at salary and overhead, not executive yachts. Math just doesn't support the narrative, and it really never has. And look, I'm not out here saying the community is always wrong. Last year during Invictus, CIG launched Flight Blades as real money only ship components that affected performance. The community went nuclear, and they were right to. Gameplay affecting upgrades hidden behind a cash wall and a crowdfunded alpha is exactly the kind of thing that deserves pushback. And the fact that CIG walked it back inside of a week means that they knew it was the wrong thing to do. That's the system working. The community speaks up on a legitimate issue, and if CIG listens, the course gets corrected. Now, let me talk about the Drake and Ironclad angle because this is the piece I think people might be missing. Drake getting exclusive Defensecon advertising at Belvic and every other visible corner of the verse is not a coincidence. Drake is launching the Ironclad during this window, and the Ironclad is genuinely one of the most anticipated ships in the entire game. But more than that, it's the ship that finally pays off one of CIG's oldest technological promises: detachable command modules, modular ship gameplay. It's the kind of deep ship system work that people have been waiting a decade to actually see in their hands, and honestly, some of us never thought it would actually happen. Think about what they're doing here. You don't build an entire 2-week marketing event about the ship that proves that you can finally land the hard stuff, unless you're about to cash in that credibility with something even bigger. First, we got the Idris, now we're getting the Ironclad, Galaxy's landing in November, the Kraken's in active development. Squadron 42 is the other big one. This is also a signal about the studio itself. For years, the knock on CIG has been that Squadron 42 was eating all the developer bandwidth that should have been going to the MMO. And that was 100% true. If CIG is confident enough to ship the Ironclad with the working systems during the same window they're announcing Squadron 42, that tells you the studios have rebalanced. Squadron 42 is done, or close enough to done, that the engineering focus has already shifted to the persistent universe side. We've seen it in the transport rewrite, we've seen it in the engine improvements. There's really nothing they can't do now that the studio is focused on the MMO part of the game. That's a sentence I wasn't sure I'd ever say on this channel, but I'm saying it now. I do believe it. And let's talk about GTA 6 timing, because this is the business case that seals it for me. Rockstar is launching GTA this fall. If they were going to delay it again, we'd have heard it by now because there are tons of tie-in deals related to this launch that need adequate warning. When that game hits, it's going to consume the entire gaming conversation for months. Every gaming outlet on the planet's going to be covering GTA 6 instead of whatever else is happening. If CIG tries to launch Squadron 42 into that media environment, they're fighting a losing battle for exposure. But if they launch Squadron 42 in late July or August, they get a clear window. Summer is traditionally a weaker release period, which actually works in their favor when there's less competition for coverage. The hype can build without being stepped on. Early buyers can finish the campaign and start talking about it before GTA 6 swallows everything. By the time Rockstar drops their release, Squadron 42 is already in the wild with word of mouth working for it. The idea that CIG could blindly ship Squadron 42 into the GTA 6 release window doesn't track with how they operate. Summer window is the right window, and all the evidence that we're seeing points to that timing. Now, I want to be honest about where I could be wrong. The most obvious way I could be wrong is if CIG delays again. That's happened enough times in the history of the game that I'd be an idiot not to acknowledge it. Maybe the May event is just a teaser and the actual release slips to 2027. Maybe Defensecon is just a rebranded Invictus Launch week, and the Squadron 42 angle is me reading tea leaves that aren't really there. Maybe the buyback pool is purely about fraud or gray market cleanup and has nothing to do with an imminent release. All of that is possible. I don't think it's the most likely scenario, but it's possible. And if CIG announces a release date and then delays it, I'll be the first person on this channel saying so. But I don't think that's what this is. Everything we're seeing right now looks like a company that knows what it's shipping. The branding absence, the buyback pool, the Drake showcase, Chris Roberts' own public statements about how this announcement would look. It all fits one picture, and that picture is a 2026 summer release of Squadron 42. If I'm wrong, I'll own it. Come back to this video in July and dunk on me in the comments. I'll pin the best one.